basketball family is the strongest there's ever been, there ever will be.
Nate Humphrey hands King Rice the ball. Pushes into Hubert Davis. 8 seconds. Davis trying to get free. Over to Fox. Fox, baseline. Up for the shot. Good. Off the glass. Oklahoma calls timeout. But the game is over. The game is over. Carolina has upset number 1 Oklahoma. Been ready on his second attempt. That one is no good. They battle for it. Loose ball. Recovered by Vinny.
With 20 seconds left to play, goes back to Michael Jordan. Jumper from out on the left. Good! 63, 62, 13, 12, 11. Georgetown with one timeout. Brent Brown looking. Throw away to Worthy. 35. The Tar Heels are going to win the national championship. Carolina with foul. He takes the timeout. Technical foul. Technical foul.
Brown gets it into Williams. Comes Williams front court. Williams on the drive. Gets it back out the head. Long outside shot. Short rebound. It's over. And how about the Tar Heels? They are the national champions. The Tar Heels are the national dadgum champions.
And that's what it takes when you big time games. You got to compete. You do it with your brain, and you got to do it with your heart too. And that's pretty doggone good.
From QCBroadcasting.com, this is the Roy's Boys Podcast with your host, Josh Marlowe. The 154th edition of the Roy's Boys Podcast starts right now. Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of the Roy's Boys Podcast. We are powered by Carolina Electrical Services. Today we are back, me and Anthony, to recap Carolina's 93-80 loss up in Iowa City last night in the ACC Big Ten Challenge, and what turned out to be a really bad night for the ACC within the challenge. But, buddy, we knew going into the game that it was going to take a lot for Carolina to win. They had to do a lot of things right. They failed to do a lot of those things we talked about in the preview, right, as they continue to turn the ball over. They continue to miss free throws, and Iowa made them pay with a unreal shooting night from three. Their best player, Luka Garza, completely dominated the interior in the second half, got all of our big men in foul trouble. And Carolina, even though they erased another double-digit deficit and came all the way back to take an eventual lead in the second half, it wasn't enough to get an upset on the road in Iowa City.
It's a weird place to be in because, I mean, we're guys that really like to preach no moral victories, but at the same time, I mean, this was a game that could have easily gotten away from you because of how hot Iowa was early on. Now, part of that, again, was because you were not great defensively. You turned the ball over a little bit too much. But the other part of it was they were just making everything they were looking at. So it just, you know, these are the types of games that Carolina always seems to get into. These guys have just unreal shooting nights. And, I mean, this one is one of the tops. Like, we talk about, you know, we say that all the time. This is the most three-pointers that a team has hit against Carolina, tied for the most in the Roy Williams era. I mean, this was a legitimate, just unbelievable, out of this world shooting night from Iowa. But, yeah, I mean, Carolina just, again, when they didn't need to turn the ball over, they had trouble, you know, holding onto the basketball. When they needed to get important rebounds on the defensive end, they couldn't get those important rebounds. So, you know, it's stuff like that that's just really frustrating. And that's the biggest thing was, you know, I think if Carolina would have gotten blown out in this game, it wouldn't have even hurt as much. The fact that you got all the way back into it, you had guys that, you know, you didn't expect to play major roles in this game, like Walker Kessler and Andrew Platek, come up with big plays to help get you back into the game, just for you to fall out of the game with a 14-0 run the other way for Iowa. That was, I think, what hurt the most in this game and is the reason why it'll sting for a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, you kind of leave the same game, or you kind of feel the same way you felt after Texas. You didn't lose the same way you lost to Texas, but you got down double digits. You battled all the way back. You took the lead, but you couldn't maintain the lead. And then you look at the stat sheet, and it's pretty evident why you got beat. You can't give up 17 made threes. As good as a shooting night as it was for Iowa, I felt like they should have adjusted their defensive coverage where they were doubling every time Luka Garza got the ball inside. They were leaving their snipers open for three. Well, when they were both making 5 3-pointers each, at some point, I'm not going to leave that guy and let him have a wide open look at the basket. Turnovers, turned the ball over 18 times. That turned into 21 Iowa points off of turnovers. And again, it's not even the volume of turnovers, it's how they turn the ball over, where it's usually in a live ball situation, and you're given a layout or a run out for a lay-in, a dunk, or a three-pointer. You're just lucky there was no environment for Iowa to feed off of, or this would have gotten ugly, and then you missed 8 more free throws. I mean, 12 of 20 on the surface, isn't a terrible from which we saw in Asheville, but you still missed 8 foul shots. You can't do that. Especially when you've gotten to the bonus as early as you did in both halves. So the recipe for Carolina to play better is right there in front of their face, which is why you can't leave the game feeling negative, because the issues with this team are fixable. You're not at the point where you felt during last season where you just knew that the issues that team had, they couldn't fix. But you made a good point when we talked about the Iowa game in the preview, saying that usually a team that turns the ball over a lot early in the season, that sticks, and a team that can't make free throws, that just becomes a trend. That is what's developing for this team right now. But you look at it, Carolina scored 80 for the first time this year, and they got their offense in traditional Carolina fashion. They shot 48% from the field. They shot 40% from three. They grabbed 15 offensive rebounds, got 14 second chance points. That number should be a little bit higher, but you were still getting about a point per offensive rebound. Your bench gave you 27. You scored 42 in the paint, and you got 24 in the fast break.
You're just making me angrier with this.
So, and I think that's the thing is and I think that's why, because when I finished watching the game last night and I decompressed, I was like, okay, this was a loss that didn't come as a surprise. This is number 3 team in the country. But then I got into this morning where I was writing my other article and I was looking at the numbers, and I'm like, Carolina played the way they wanted to play, and they got beat, in somewhat sound fashion when you look at how the scoreboard margin ended up and how you were down at halftime.
Yeah.
So I think that's why Roy Williams said in the postgame, there's no moral victories, but this is why he likes his team. This is why he feels good about his team, because they are improving, they are getting better, they are doing the things that you want them to do. And a big reason, or a big person that really embodies that, and is a guy that we need to play better, is Caleb Love. Only 11 points, 4 of 13 from the field, so he took bad shots, 1 of 4 from 3. He gave you 6 assists, that's great, but he also turned the ball over 4 times. But the biggest thing that I noticed with him in the game last night was the willingness to push the basketball after Iowa made a shot. And the thing about Carolina is when they're running at their quote-unquote their best, it's when they push after a made basket. He did that last night. It got easy offense for Carolina. It got easy offense for him. But this is a guy that Carolina needs to start seeing the light switch turn, because we need better point guard play from him sooner rather than later.
Well, I like that you mentioned that at the end there, because that was the first time probably in about a year and a half that we have seen Carolina run like that in a big game. I don't remember what point it was at. I think it was some point early in the second half, right as they had gotten back into it. They put up the stat that they had 20 fast break points. We didn't see that at all. There were stretches last year, you probably went 7-8 games with 20 fast break points. That was just, you didn't run. It didn't happen. Last night we saw it, and that, again, there's some encouraging things that you take away from this, but there's some other stuff that really concerns you about this Carolina team, and that's what's just so frustrating. And, unfortunately, I think if this team had the schedule that the team last year had, they would be in a really good situation. You would feel like they would be able to take care of business against those smaller opponents, and that would allow them to get into a groove. This year, this team is probably a team that needs some time to build, and they would be able to, but they don't have the schedule to do that. So that's what is just really conflicting about, where we're at with this Carolina team. Because, as you mentioned, there are some things that you really love about what you've seen from Caleb Love. There's some stuff that you want to see him really improve on, especially when it comes to his ball handling. Same thing with R.J. Davis. There's some other, there's times where you watch his game and you say, wow, this guy I mean, he could really go off for Carolina if he could ever get into a groove. This could be a huge season for him. Then there's other times where he dribbles into trouble and turns the ball over. There's a couple of tough shots that he'll take that he doesn't necessarily need to. Those are the things where it just starts getting frustrating. The biggest thing for R.J. Davis that I think was concerning a little bit last night too was how easily he was driven by on the defensive end at times. That was concerning as well for him. But that's the most frustrating part of it because again, you look at the front court. Garrison Brooks didn't start off the night well, got himself going as the game went along. You saw some really good things once again from Walker Kessler. But the guy that was the star was Day'Ron Sharpe. When he was on the floor, extremely effective. But he got himself into foul trouble. Part of that, again, you can go back and forth. We do this every time that we watch a game. We're all thinking the same thing. There are some questionable calls that we all scratch our heads over. But it's just part of the game. It is what it is. So I think, there's so many things to be encouraged about with your front line. But again, when you look in that backcourt, there's just so many things that you have to be concerned about that it's hard to get overly excited, especially in a loss.
Yeah, the thing with R.J. Davis was last night, scored you 12 points, was 4 away from his shot making and his shot selection for him isn't the problem. It's when he's running the offense at certain times. Last night he looked overmatched, and defensively, I love how aggressive he wants to play, but you can't be as aggressive as he wants to be and get blown by, give him a backdoor dunk at one point in the second half. So I feel like that'll just come with time where he just realizes, look, I don't have to be as aggressive as I need to be. And if I'm going to play that aggressive, I got to move my feet quicker, and I got to be able to stay in front of my man. Day'Ron Sharpe, and really the fact that Carolina's 3 main bigs were all in foul trouble at the under 8-minute timeout really sealed the way this game was going to end because you couldn't have Brooks and Baycott and Sharpe all on the floor because they all had 4 fouls. You got to credit Iowa for doing a good job because while they were banging threes from left and right, they put the ball back inside, got Carolina's guys in foul trouble, and that really determined the outcome of the game. But the way he plays has been infectious, and he was really good last night. 13 points, 5 of 6 from the field. He did miss 3 free throws, but he looked more comfortable at the line. His shot looked more fluid than it looked in Maui the week before. Grabbed you 6 boards. His energy, I really felt like sparked Carolina when they came out a little sluggish to start the first half. And it's a big reason why, Armando Baycott last night had his worst game to the season. He had 4 points and 11 rebounds. He was still for the most part, had a positive impact when on the floor. But if Day'Ron Sharpe can continue to play like this, you feel like it's only a matter of time before he takes over that starting role. And I think Garrison Brooks got himself going, which was important. I got very critical of him early because he was soft. And Jimmy Dykes made the comment, this is the ACC preseason player of the year, and he's not existent. He's not demanding the ball. He's not working to get position down low. Carolina's not looking to find him. When they got back to running the offense through him, everything kind of came smoother, and he gave you the best performance of the season, 17 points, 7-11 from the field, and grabbed 8 rebounds.
Yeah, and Roy Williams mentioned it in the postgame as well. I mean, Roy doesn't put anything lightly. He said, there's some encouraging things, but this team just frankly needs to be tougher, and that was part of it. I thought the same thing early on. I felt like, to be honest with you, it was really both big men that were playing like that. Garrison on Carolina's side, same thing with Garza on the other side. They were just having success from deep. And on Carolina's end, I think the thinking was, in order to get ourselves back in this game, we have to start hitting some outside shots, when that really wasn't the case. What Carolina needed to do was to be able to get stops on the defensive end and get out and run. Once they were able to do that, they got themselves back in the game. And then when they had to go into the half court, Garrison did a really good job of finding his spots. I thought he was a lot better. Not only was, he demanding the ball a little bit more, he was getting himself to areas where he can do damage. You saw a lot early in the season. He was out towards the free throw line. He's in spaces where he has to take longer shots. Although he's developed a jump shot, that's not the area where he's most comfortable. When he was able to get to those dirty areas and make plays, you saw his confidence start to pick back up. and that was where he was able to be most effective. With the Day'Ron Sharpe thing, I think, that's the biggest thing is that if they end up making a move, it's not even going to be because Armando Bacot has struggled. I think overall, Armando's had a better start to this year than he did last year. I didn't look great last night on the offensive end, but he's still doing everything that you need. He had a pretty solid night defensively as well, for the most part until later on, but that was really just, to be honest with you, was it really a lack of defense? More just a lack of rebounding that puts you in bad spots on the defensive end on second chance opportunities. That was pretty much the reason that they had success inside late.